Hello Year 9, I hope you're all well and have been getting on okay with the work set. Last week, your task was to use the resources provided to research and plan a response to the statement, Colston's statue was not a memorial of the suffering of black slaves, but a monument about the wealth slavery brought to the city. All statues linked to slavery should be taken down. In this session, we're going to look at how to use rhetorical devices for effect, how to use our language to have the biggest impact on the reader, and how to use our planning notes to structure our response. As we go through, I'll let you know when to pause the video so you can complete the tasks. First though, I'd like you to write the date and title, which is writing task 4, at the top of your page and underline it. Do this now. The first task then we're going to look at is focusing on rhetorical devices. Now, rhetorical devices are also known as methods and techniques or just devices, so don't get confused. They all mean the same thing. And these are the devices and methods that we can use to use our language to create a specific reaction from the reader. So, for example, when you're writing about something you are passionate about, you want the reader to be as passionate about the topic as you are. If you are angry about a decision being made, you want the reader to be as angry as you are. And so using the language and rhetorical devices, these methods, it can help to convey that emotion more effectively. These rhetorical devices also allow you to influence and manipulate the reader to believe in what you are writing about, believing in your point of view and wanting them to feel those things, those feelings that you do. So this first task you need to complete is to recall these rhetorical devices and methods, and you'll have come across them before in your Right Here, Right Now lessons. So what you've got to do is to match the example to the correct method. So if we have a look at the first one then, we need to work out which example sentence is the rhetorical question. Now we know that a rhetorical question ends in a question mark, so we're going to look for the sentence that ends in the question mark. I'm just going to scroll down and here we go. The rhetorical question is at the bottom here. How can you not feel exhilarated watching this textbook-worthy moment unfold in real time? So what you're going to do is draw an arrow between the rhetorical question and the example sentence. You need to do the same with the other methods. So draw a line to the correct example. And we're doing this because we want some examples of these methods that we can use in our own writing later. I want you now to pause the video and match the rest of the devices to the example sentences. Next then, we're going to look at how to make our language more effective. We know that language is a powerful tool. It can be used to control and influence and manipulate people to do things and think things that they hadn't thought of before. The media are experts at using language to control us. If we think back to the task last week when we compared the headlines in the Daily Mail and the Daily Mirror, the same event was described as being lawless and reckless, and then it was described as being a march for change. Depending then on which newspaper you may have bought, your thoughts on those events will have been influenced by that language that the newspaper used, and this is really quite powerful. We want to be able to achieve the same results as the media can, but within our own writing. So let's have a look more closely at task 2. We've got an example here, a statue of a slave trader that was pulled from its plinth and dropped into a harbour by anti-racism protesters has been rescued from the water. In example 2, we have a statue of a slave trader that was torn from its plinth and hurled into a harbour by anti-racism protesters has been retrieved from the water. Now, in this first example, we can look at some of these keywords: pulled, dropped, rescued. they have softer tones to them. It's almost as if it was an accident or a mistake that the statue was taken down. This idea of dropped almost has a sense of childishness to it, like the dropping of a toy that then needed to be rescued from the water. Whereas in the second example, the tone is very different. We've got the words torn and hurled, and they have harsher tones. If we think about the connotations of these words, they're more aggressive and violent. The statue is being torn, ripped down, and then hurled, thrown into the water. It's much more aggressive. It's almost like it was an intentional act. And the words that have been used here convey that anger and that hatred that the people felt towards this statue. Now, we call this emotive or emotional language. It's language that makes the reader feel and react in a particular way. So, we need to be able to maintain this tone of voice throughout our writing. And therefore, it's important that we are selecting words carefully to match that point of view, to match that tone. So if you are angry about the statues being taken down and think they should stay, the words that you use need to reflect this. And vice versa, if you think the statues should be removed, the language you use needs to be emotive to show how you feel about that. Because at the end of the day, we want to convince our reader to feel the same as you do. The task then is to look at these sentences, and you can see that I've missed out some key words. And what I want you to do is to think about your point of view on this topic. What would you want your reader to think about and feel about the topic as well? Think about the words that you can use. Remember, we've got to maintain that really clear tone of voice throughout. So choose your words carefully, adjectives and verbs that convey these thoughts. If you need to, you can add in some extra words so that the sentence makes sense. But what I really want you to focus on here is thinking about your ambitious vocabulary, not just in the task, but you can use this later on as well. But this is your chance to really show off. Think about using a thesaurus. You can access one online through Google if you don't have one at home. Or you can right click and select the synonyms tab on your computer to look for alternative words. But a word of warning here, just make sure that the context of the word that you are choosing is accurate so that the sentence still makes sense. I'd like you to pause the video now and complete this task. Now, at this point, if you are still unsure how to create a successful tone of voice, there is a YouTube video that we've linked to this task that Miss Marshall created on creating a point of view. And I'd really advise that you watch that. It is has been created for year 8, but it is completely appropriate for this year 9 task as well. So have a quick watch of that before moving on to the next task, which is looking at structuring and writing your response. So we've got a sense of the style of writing that we need to match this point of view perspective writing. We're going to look at the ideas that you've planned last week. So again, let's just have a little look at the statement. Colston's statue was not a memorial of the suffering of black slaves, but a monument about the wealth slavery brought to the city. All statues linked to slavery should be taken down. And you are going to write an article conveying your point of view. Now, last week's task, you are asked to choose one side of the argument. And this is really important to maintain that clear point of view. If you have arguments for both sides, your point of view will not be convincing because your readers will be conflicted. It is your job as a writer to convince the reader to believe one viewpoint, one point of view. Now, it might be that you yourselves are divided on this topic, and that's okay. You're allowed to have those opinions. But for the purpose of this task, I really want you to choose one side to focus on, because that's going to help you to, again, create that really clear point of view. So hopefully you have managed to create a list of different points for that one side of the argument. But to help you, I've got some examples that I've taken from some of the work that I've read this week. So let's have a look at those. So here they are. Okay. Now, again, you can pause the video and have a quick read through them. And you will notice that the points all have a clear focus on that one point of view. And this is why it's so important to plan your ideas. When we write them down, we can see if we've got ourselves a little bit muddled, or if one of your points isn't clearly in favour or support of the side of the argument you want to take. Not only that, it helps to keep your writing focused as you are actually writing. It's like clearing your mind of what you want to write in the next paragraph, so you can focus on the paragraph that you're writing at that moment. It's a bit like a brain dump, getting all of those ideas on paper, allowing you then to write with a more focused mindset. Again, I want you to stop the video now to check back through your planning ideas, making sure that you focused on one clear point of view. And if you need to, if you're short of some ideas or you prefer one of the ideas that I've shown here, I'm quite happy for you to magpie them for your own work. Okay, so once you've got your ideas, you're ready to organise them and structure them. Now, writers use the structure of their writing to take the reader on a journey. We do this with our creative writing, with our descriptive and narratives, but it's just as important that we are having that structure in our non-fiction writing. How you organise your ideas can be the difference between the reader understanding and believing what you're saying, or leaving feeling confused and believing in something different to what you want them to believe in. And obviously that's not what we're aiming for. So we can use the following format for our impact: opening, middle, and a clear ending. Okay. Now in the opening you want to introduce your topic. You want to catch the reader's attention and give them a little hint of what's to come in the rest of the article. If your opening is not effective, then the reader might lose interest and stop reading. And it's a good idea here to think about how magazines and newspaper articles you've read start, and think about magpieing some of their opening sentences. In the middle section, you are developing your idea that you've mentioned in your opening, and this is where you're going to use those points from your plan to help you. Each of those points is going to be given a new paragraph, and then you use that point to create a topic sentence that introduces what you're going to say in that paragraph. And then you want to use a range of rhetorical devices and methods, those examples from the very first task, to help you to explain and support your point of view in more detail. Your ending then is going to sum up your main idea, and that's that controlling idea, that message you want your reader to be left with, and that's got to be repeated all the way through so it's really clear and really focused. So in the ending here, you're going to make your final point. And a really good tool, really good tip here is to link it back to your opening paragraph. So you can use some of those keywords in your opening sentence perhaps, and repeat them in your final sentence. We're going to have a little look then at the opening in more detail. So one of the biggest mistakes that students make when they start writing their responses is that they respond directly to the question or the statement. So they might say, the statement says, Colston, blah, 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 blah. Or they say, I agree with the statement because, or I disagree with the statement because. Now, we are pretending to be journalists here. We are writers, but we're taking on that mindset of a journalist. And so we want to do what they do. We have a topic and we make it our own. So when we're writing a piece of nonfiction, we imagine then that I've not set this task for you, that you have come up with this topic yourself, you've decided to write it, and therefore you are not linking it to that statement. You're writing about the statement, but not making that direct reference to it. Okay, so let's have a look at some examples of what I mean then. Okay, and this first example then says, I disagree with the statement that all statues should be removed. I think this because the statues represent the horrific treatment of Black people, and we cannot allow statues to stay that represent this. Now, whilst the student's opening has a clear point of view that they disagree, statues should be removed, we shouldn't keep them, it is not engaging, and there's none of those devices, those methods that we looked at in the first task that impact in this section, in this opening. Let's have a look at the second example then. Okay. Captured, tortured, killed. These are the realities that faced a Black man on one of Colston's slave ships. Do we really want to be glorifying these acts with monuments of white men like Colston? Their actions must not be celebrated. Their monuments must come down. We can see a really clear difference between example 1 and example 2. In this second example, the students opened with a triplet. That's just 3 powerful verbs: captured, tortured, killed. And it's followed by a colon. Just notice that after a colon, you use a lowercase letter. So straight away, the reader is engaging with the emotional effect of what men like Colston did. These verbs are harsh sounding. They're captured, tortured, killed. That D sound on the end makes it harsh. And they therefore suggest that pain and suffering that these men faced. Their point of view is continued in the second sentence with this rhetorical question. Do we really want to be glorifying these acts with monuments of white men like Colston? By including that rhetorical question here, you're inviting the reader to join in with your quest at understanding why it is important to remove these statues. Their final sentences then, again, reinforce that message, that clear point of view. And here the students used a must not must sentence. Their actions must not be celebrated. Their monuments must come down. And that then leads them nicely onto their middle section, where they will explain why these statues must come down. So your opening doesn't need to be very long. You can see here there's just 4 sentences, and it's just really outlining what your point of view is and giving the reader that direction for what you're then going to answer in the main body of your writing. Okay. So in that main section then, you are going to use your points that you planned last week, and you are going to write a paragraph for each of those points. Turn the point into a topic sentence and then explain in the sentences that come after that why it is important in relation to your point of view. Don't forget to include those methods, those rhetorical devices in your paragraphs here, but be careful not to overdo it, especially with those rhetorical questions. You don't want to just have a paragraph full of rhetorical questions, because again, it's going to lose the focus and the interest of the reader, and you just don't want them to stop reading at this point. So can I advise you to not use more than 2 rhetorical questions in each paragraph? Ideally, you don't really want to use more than 1. So once you've turned each of those points into a paragraph, you will have a really nice argument, and we are going to end it. And with your ending, you want to leave the reader thinking about all of those points that you've made. You want to end with that really powerful statement. So here I've taken the last 2 short sentences from the opening paragraph and repeated them. Their actions must not be celebrated, their monuments must come down. And this creates that cohesion, that circular structure, that clear structure to your point of view. So give that a go in your own writing. It really makes it more successful. So that's it. That's how to structure your writing. Please keep thinking about your vocabulary choices throughout and your language throughout. So think about task 2 and what we did with that task, thinking about the impact of those individual words. But try and have fun with it as well, playing around, using different rhetorical devices and methods, seeing what would have the most impact in your writing. Don't be afraid to write something, read it back, cross it out, and have another go, and seeing how it might change the impact and the effect. I look forward to reading your work. Don't forget to submit it to your teachers, either via Show My Homework, email, or on your OneNote page. Take care and have a good week.